So you're probably addicted to porn. Now, I don't say that just to be provocative, although admittedly it is, but I say that also because it's statistically likely. And here, I'll show you what I mean. So, as of this is I'm going to go from 2014 and then I'm going to lead up to 2019 stats to show you some comparison of what we're dealing with here statistically as far as porn use goes. Um, so, as of 2014, 66% of men report viewing porn at least once a month, and 41% of women report viewing porn once a month, according to a peer-reviewed medical journal in JAMA, which is just a medical journal. Also, according to the University of Texas, the percentage of young men who watch porn weekly is at 65%, and 18% of young women view porn weekly. So we went from monthly to weekly, and it's still a high percentage of men. There was a big drop off in women, but still a high percentage of men who viewing porn on a regular basis. Some reports even show numbers of roughly 75% of young men between 18 and 25 view porn monthly as of 2018. So we have some reports that even say numbers higher than that, than the 66% reported by JAMA. However, going to 2019, things don't get any better. Things actually get worse, which is not really that surprising. So in 2019, according to Statista, over 83% of men between 18 and 35 view porn weekly. Nearly 30% of adult women in the same age bracket also watch porn weekly. The percentage of young people addicted to porn has increased and shows no signs of stopping anytime soon. It was also reported by the same source in 2019 that 13% of web searches by that age bracket are porn related, as well as 20% of mobile searches. Our country is addicted to porn, especially our young men and young women who are coming up and growing up. And really, porn use is becoming much, much more regular because it's so readily available. We have a pandemic on our hands, if you will. I'm using that word purposefully because it's rampant, it's corrupting our society, and it's spreading rapidly due to the easy accessibility and the sharing of it, of young children with each other. Like, oh, I've seen this. Here, look at this. I mean, I remember in high school, someone showing me boob pics. Just turned around, they're like, hey, look at this. And bam, it was a naked woman. I was like, what the crap? What are you showing me this for? So this is a pandemic of sorts. This is a pandemic of the mind, pandemic of the spirit, pandemic of the heart. And it's spreading among our youth, it's spreading among our people, and it's no one likes to talk about it because either you're religious and it's embarrassing, or you're secular and you just kind of assume it. So, I mean, it's a problem. It's a big problem. And so why? Why do we have this problem? And I mean, there's multiple reasons why. Why is people so addicted to porn? I mean, obviously there's the obvious. You have the fact that some people will probably be laughing right now, like, of course, why are people addicted to porn? Because it's fun, because it's enjoyable. I mean, who doesn't like, at least for men especially, I mean, that's why the percentages of men who are so much higher than women, but especially for men, what man doesn't like to watch naked women? To be blunt, like, what man doesn't like to watch naked women get it on and get dirty? What man doesn't like to watch people perform sexual acts? And like, who doesn't enjoy watching that? I mean, it brings fun, it brings pleasure, and by the time you're done, you get a little bit of excitement out of it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's fun, it's enjoyable. And then that leads us into the next little reason why, is why not? And it seems kind of, I guess, redundant. It seems kind of weird, but that is kind of a reasoning. Why not? Why shouldn't I watch porn? Why shouldn't I masturbate? What is the big deal? I mean, in a lot of cases, in secular sources especially, which a lot of these things I'm pulling from are actually mostly secular. There are some religious ones or Christian ones I'm pulling from, but a lot of them are actually secular studies that I'm going to be pulling from and using. And not all of them actually say porn is bad in of itself. There's actually one, for instance, called Recovery Village, which basically reported that they believe about 70% or a little bit over 70% of porn use is healthy or is good. It's not bad. At least not bad for you. It's relatively healthy. And then they say about 25 to 30% is unhealthy and addictive behavior, but they say about 70% is not so much. And Recovery Village is an addiction center, basically. Some counselors and psychologists. I know people who did counseling stuff. I know from some of this research I did, A lot of people in counseling and counselors and psychologists and stuff say, oh no, porn's natural. It's completely normal. It's completely natural for you to do. There's really no definite harms or noticeable side effects, or if there is some, they're not that big of a deal. It's actually natural. It helps curb your sexual appetite and helps you get some release. It helps you get some excitement and fun, and might as well enjoy yourself while you can. And let's be honest, most of pop culture, approves highly of sexual expression. And I'm not talking about like gay, lesbian, trans. That's not what I'm talking about, even though that is also part of it. But no, enjoy yourself sexually. Your sexuality is all that really matters. Your sexuality is your expression. That is what's important about you. Enjoy yourself, please yourself. Get all the pleasure and all that drive in you. Release it out any way you can, any way you want. And porn is a great way to do that, because porn basically can give you anything your mind ever imagined or wanted, and it can give you that pleasure, and you can find what you're looking for. I mean, if you look up anything, it's probably on there. So there's this mentality of why not, especially within the secular world, and some quasi-religious worlds too, I suppose. But in a lot of times, secular people, it's like, why not? However, I'm going to show, as I go throughout this video, and you'll see, and I'm going to leave a timestamp so you can kind of check out what I'm talking about. But even if you're a secular person, even if you're not religious and you don't necessarily believe that sexual immorality is a problem, or you don't necessarily believe that porn or lust is a problem, there are still big consequences and big problems that come with porn. Namely, you have the addiction one, and then you also have some others. But I'm going to have timestamp right here, where for people who are interested in just the consequences of porn, especially for even just secular people, I'll timestamp, and you can jump right there if you want to get there right away. But I'm going to be giving some more commentary and more stats here following up before that. So there are a lot of consequences, a lot of problems, even for secular people, ranging from physical to mental, that are just caused by porn. And so this is a problem that people don't like to talk about because, one, people enjoy it. Two, it makes money for a lot of people. And three, again, it's just kind of embarrassing. It's just kind of weird or awkward or just assumed. So let's move forward here and let's talk about it. So another big reason why we have a big porn problem is, one, people enjoy watching naked people get it on. Two, people have this why not attitude, especially within secular world. But there's also a lot of people who have problems with it, secular or religious. And so why are people, I know plenty of people within the church or people who are against it, who are addicted to this stuff. Why? Another big reason, outside of, you could say, many factors like curiosity, sexual interests, and there's this idea of just wanting to, what is this all about? You have also trauma, insecurities, or trying to figure out sexual expectations of someone and maybe in a relationship and they never had sex before. They might want to get expectations and what should they do. So there's multiple factors that come into play, but I think one of the biggest ones, why do we have such a problem with porn, is because porn exists in the first place. Now that might seem kind of weird, but what I mean is the exposure, the easy exposure of pornography. So let me give you an idea what I'm talking about here. So before the internet, before you could have quick access through a computer to look at whatever dirty images you want to look at or videos or whatever, you would actually have to go outside and deviate through more direct means, either prostitution, strippers, or saloons, or whatever it would be. You would have to go out of your way to do it, which would mean that you'd probably have to be relatively an adult. You would have to be older, with some money, with some ability to travel, and with means and stuff. And you would have to actually be able to go out and do this stuff. But with porn, the exposure, the availability is right at your fingertips, right at your house. It doesn't require much effort, doesn't require much of anything at all. You just have to be present and pull it up. So exposure is a big reason why we have this problem in the first place, the accessibility of it. And so with this great exposure, that's why we see so many young people specifically hooked on it, because children and a lot of people before they're even 18 are exposed to pornography, normally unwittingly. They accidentally stumbled upon it. Majority of kids, especially under the age of 13, do that. And here, I'll tell you what I mean. So according to the University of New Hampshire, 9 out of 10 American boys are exposed to porn before they turn 18. 9 out of 10. And this is from the University of New Hampshire. This isn't just some random wiki page. This is an actual study done by a college. 9 out of 10 American boys are exposed to porn before they're 18. Before they're even adults, kids are exposed to this. 9 out of 10 of boys are exposed to this. According to the University of Nebraska, the average age for a boy to be exposed to porn is 13. So much less under 18, 13 years old. A lot of kids haven't even hit puberty at 13, and some do, but some are just starting. A lot of these kids are literally just kids. They have no idea about their sexuality or sex or whatever. They have no idea because they haven't even hit puberty yet. They are not even there yet. According to the University of Indiana, 84% of boys between 14 and 18 report having seen porn at least once, and 57% of girls in the same age group reported likewise. Again, just another study corroborating the fact that high percentages of children have seen porn before they're 18, as they're kids, as they're teenagers, in high school or middle school or elementary school, in a lot of cases as well. This is crazy. This is exposure at ages before kids even have a chance. Because kids have underdeveloped frontal cortex. I mean, your frontal cortex doesn't really develop until you're in your 20s, roughly. So a lot of these kids are impulsive. They are bad decision makers. They don't know what they're doing. They're exploring the world. When you're a kid, you're exploring the world. And so when you are exposed to something that's something you're not aware of, something you're going to be naturally inclined to do down the road at least, when you're exposed to something that's intriguing, that gives you some sort of pleasure or whatever, you don't really judge the consequences of your decision long term. It's simply in the moment. You're peer pressured, and you don't lack the ability to make good decisions. You lack the ability to make good decisions because you're a kid. You don't know any better. You don't know what you're doing. Half the time you're just learning stuff as you go and making mistakes along the way. And so when you're 13 and exposed to porn, and there's been cases here in a lot of the studies where they're 7 years old, 5 years old were exposed to porn. They're not even hitting puberty yet. They don't even know what they're looking at. And a lot of times it's reported that they're either traumatized or scared, but yet they're addicted. And they don't know why. But anyway, so as a kid, you're a poor decision maker. You don't make good decisions. And you're exposed to something like this early, and you get addicted to it. And you start practicing it, you start building up habits, and you don't tell anyone about it. And by the time you're several years down the road, you have a full-on blown pornography addiction that's interfering with your work, interfering with your personal life, interfering with how you view people, messing up your body physically, and stuff like that. It causes major problems. And you were exposed as a kid before you knew any better, before you were able to make the best decisions because you just lack self-control. This is a major issue for multiple reasons. One being the obvious that kids shouldn't be exposed to porn or sexual things as kids. They should be taught in a safe environment about what sex is as they get older and as they're able to understand. As they go through puberty, they should be taught by people they can trust, people who care about them, what they can expect. And they should be led into these topics with care and respect from adults who respect them. They shouldn't be to have their innocence stolen from them and stripped from them. They shouldn't be exposed to things that will corrupt their minds. They shouldn't be learning about sex from pornographers and from people who their only goal is to excite people by using the most disgusting ways to do so and feeding the most vile passions that people have. They shouldn't be exposed to violent pornography or BTS, which a lot of pornography is. A lot of them is very violent or kinky, and that shouldn't be their first exposure. They should be taught this by adults who care about them and love them and want their safety and health. But rather, they're exposed at young ages. First thing, before they even have puberty, is to violence, misogyny, domination, and confusion. This shouldn't be the case. And so who is to blame for this? Who is to blame that our kids and our young generations are having their innocence stripped from them? Who is to blame for this? There's a lot of blame to go around. I mean, you can blame people all around. In personal cases, obviously, you could blame family members, for instance. There have been cases of uncles, brothers, aunts, sisters, whatever, exposing their siblings or the people, exposing young children to pornography because they're corrupt, because they want to corrupt the youth, or because they're creeps, or because they're pedophiles, whatever it may be. For whatever reason they do what they do, there's a lot of times where family members or friends or trusted people in a kid's life expose them to these things. That's an issue in and of itself. But I think there's two major contributors to this issue that we can look at, that we can improve upon. And again, this point of this video isn't to point fingers. The point of this video is to expose a problem, talk about why there's a problem, and then address the problem, and we'll go down this path. One being, I think, parents is a big player in this. And what I mean by that is I believe a lot of times parents aren't taking this seriously. And not always because it's their fault necessarily from a standpoint of they're purposely trying to neglect their children, but from a standpoint sometimes of ignorance. They don't really understand. They didn't grow up with this issue. I mean, let's just take, for instance, parents who are in their 40s or 50s. A lot of them didn't have the internet growing up. They weren't exposed to pornography growing up. That wasn't an issue. They couldn't look up on a whim. Maybe there was a Playboy magazine that their dad had, or maybe they stumbled across a billboard with Coca-Cola girl with just a bikini on or something. But in general, they weren't really had easy accessibility to pornography. It just wasn't a problem that they had to deal with. So there's this idea that this is a new issue that came with the internet, that came with the computer and all these things in the late 90s, early 2000s. So when you have something that you never dealt with, you don't always know how to teach it either. You don't really know how to address it, or you're not aware of it. So some of it's just ignorance, but other parts of it with parenting, it comes in what values are you putting into your children? Are you the type of parent who's going to be bold and step into your child's life and make sure you put in safeguards early? Safeguards such as, porn blockers, so that your kids don't just stumble upon it by accident, which there's a statistic showing that about, I think it was 66% of kids under the age of 13 accidentally stumbled upon porn. It was by accident. If there was porn blockers in place, it would make it difficult, at least, for those accidents to occur. So are you putting in the proper precautions as a parent to prevent your kids from accidentally stumbling upon it? And also, are you being proactive in teaching your kids about sex in a healthy way, that they don't fall into these type of addictions or habits, or start going down a promiscuous route that's unhealthy for them because they've been getting expectations from the wrong sources? So part of it can just be the fact that parents are neglecting to take this problem seriously, or neglecting to be involved in their children's lives in a way that is actually helpful in addressing this issue. So parents have a part to play when it comes to this problem and family life in general. But one of the biggest contributors to this problem are the porn companies themselves. And yes, it goes beyond just the fact that they're making the sexual material in the first place, which I think is sinful and wrong in of itself, because I believe sex was meant for married couples, and to be honest, that's how you build a healthy society, is through family, through a husband, wife being loyal to each other and raising kids together in a healthy environment. That's the bottom, the bedrock of a healthy society in a lot of cases. But even beyond that, even beyond my sexual morals, if you will, there's also just this idea that they are purposefully making it easy for kids to come across their content. So porn companies like Pornhub or whatever tube channels are out there, I'm not sure, just Pornhub is the only one I really know off the top of my head. So you have Pornhub, for instance, which has an open platform site which you can view free porn at the click of a few buttons. And by what I understand, I actually never personally accessed the website, but I know people who did, and I know people who have and or have problems with it and stuff like that. By what I understand, these free porn sites like Pornhub, you go on there and they're like, "Are you 18?" You just say yes, whatever, and bam, it's all free access to you. A kid can get through without too much hassle. They don't have to verify their age at all. There's not really a verification process, and most kids can just access it no matter how old they are, 5, 7, 13. As long as they know how to use a computer, they can get a hold of porn. It's that easy. And porn companies know that it's that easy, and they don't care about putting a verification process in the way, because they don't care about kids. They care about money. They care about building up a audience, and they care about building up a business platform that is sustainable. And they know if they get kids early, that they can have lifetime customers. It's like smoking. When you have the smoking companies in the mid-1900s and stuff promoting these handsome-looking men smoking cigars or smoking cigarettes or whatever, and they were promoting this to a young generation. You had a lot of teenagers starting smoking cigarettes when they're young, because you know that they're going to get addicted as kids, because kids are impulsive and make bad decisions. They're going to get addicted as kids, and when they become adults, they're going to be so addicted that it's going to be so hard for them to quit that they just give up. Same thing with porn companies. They know that the kids are getting to it. They know the stats that the kids are exposed to it. They don't care. They're not putting in any measures to stop. So all they're doing is feeding kids addictions that they will develop, and when they become adults, it becomes such a problem that they don't know how to deal with it, that they just give up on trying to deal with it and just trying to manage it instead. That is one of the biggest issues, is that porn is so easily accessible. And again, that's why I believe we should be putting things in place as parents or for our own personal lives, putting things in place that make it harder to get to and to overcome these challenges. But I do believe that we can overcome these challenges because I know from personal experience you can live a life free from porn. So porn companies and family life play a big part into the problem we have with porn in our country specifically. The question is now, why does this matter? What are the consequences that actually come from porn use? Why is it such a big deal? Come on. I'm not like I'm raping anyone. It's not like I'm harming anyone. What's the problem? Well, there are multiple consequences actually that have been shown. So I'm going to start with Recovery Village, which again, to remind you, Recovery Village is not a Christian or religious organization. Recovery Village is a addiction center, which is more, by what I understand, secular. So it's just an addiction center. And they even state, according to Recovery Village, roughly 25% of porn users have a severe problem. Roughly about 25%. Even now, to put that in light, the 75% that they're talking about before that were using porn at least I think it was 20 to 30 minutes a week. And they said that wasn't much of a problem. It was personal. They did it on their own free time in their bedroom or whatever. It wasn't interfering with their social life or their personal life. So therefore they said it's not a problem or it's manageable or it's good or whatever. But 25% of porn users have they either feel guilty, they feel like they lack self-worth, it ruins their self-esteem, it's getting in problems with their work, they got fired because of adult content on their computer, they can't stop viewing porn, or they're taking up hours of their time to view porn, or they're interfering with their friend's life, they're not going out with friends because they're viewing porn. 25% of porn users have an addiction or a problem that's interfering with their life. 25%, according to Recovery Village, which is a high percentage even from just a purely a statistical standpoint. However, that's not the only problems that arise. It doesn't just interfere with work or interfere with your own personal life a little bit. It has other problems. So relationally, it has problems. So one of the top reasons, normally number one or two, according to a variety of resources, of trusted resources, including the National Library of Medicine, and also NPR, which had something similar to this. One of the number one or number two causes, depending where you look, is sexual deviance. That's the number one or two cause for divorce. Sexual deviance, which can include pornography, which includes cheating, which includes these different things. But a large time, pornography plays a part in this. NPR reported that couples or married couples that watch porn have higher divorce rates. They tend to get divorced quicker. They tend to have more marital problems. Porn tends to cause relational division between couples. And according to the Journal of Sex and Marital Therapy, the reported number one cause for divorce is lack of intimacy, which can be induced by pornography. A lack of intimacy, a lack of connection physically, lack of connection emotionally, a lack of devotion or loyalty sexually can cause relational strain and is one of the number one and number two causes for divorces and separations. So porn has personal life factors. It can interfere with work or how you deal with problems. It can interfere with relationships, ruin relationships. It's one of the bigger causes for that. You also have excessive porn use having physical consequences. Now, I'm going to quote some facts and statistics that I found from trusted resources and just give you an idea what I'm talking about here. So, according to the Kinsey Institute, which is a pretty prevalent, well-known institute that focuses on sexuality and stuff, excessive porn, and this is in 2007, so this is a little bit old, but I will be using some newer ones as well. There's excessive porn use has physical ramifications. So according to the Kinsey Institute in 2007, there's a connection between porn use and ED problems. So ED problems among young adults under the age of 40 also reportedly spiked since the introduction of porn, according to the National Library of Medicine. So since pornography was introduced, people under the age of 40, the number of ED problems with people under the age of 40, young adults, has spiked since the advent of the internet. Even 16% of high schoolers who use porn regularly report that they lack or have a weakened sex drive, versus 0% reported by non-porn users who say they have a normal sex drive. In 2015, a study showed that 71% of middle-aged men who masturbate for hours a week have sexual dysfunction. So, excessive porn use, kinky porn use, all these different things can have major ramifications for you physically. So if you're a guy and you're excessively masturbating and watching pornography, that can have problems. That can cause potentially ED. That can also cause penile fractures or other severe problems, depending on how kinky or how severe the problem gets. There have been cases of people getting bottles stuck on their genitals, or people getting toys stuck in their genitals or whatever, and causing major problems that have future ramifications, from being sterile to having to get surgeries done. So the physical ramifications are prevalent, and it can cause more issues. And the number of young adults has increased who are using things like Viagra and other pills to help compensate for the fact that they have been burning up and frying up their sexual energy and their sexual organs. They're basically just overblowing a fuse basically, and the more young people need to use Viagra and stuff because of this. So you have relational problems, you have personal life problems, you have physical consequences, you also have mental changes. So this is going to be probably this is the one that I saw in the research. Most people, there wasn't too much dissent among these things. It was pretty much agreed upon, but no one really wants to make it public because no one wants to talk about it. And again, porn makes a lot of money. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, so you don't mess with the money makers. But this one was the only one I really saw dissent and kind of a controversy as of porn's effects. You'll kind of see why. So there's also mental effects from porn. So according to the DOJ, the Department of Justice, so government organization, they reported that there's a correlation between porn use and sexual violence. So people who use porn are more likely typically people who use porn are also sexual offenders. So most sexual offenders have porn problem or had a porn problem of some sorts. According to Josh.org, reported that similarly active porn use is correlated with sex crimes and rape. Nebraska University took note during a survey that most men, especially when exposed to porn as kids or very young, thought or were attracted to the idea that women ought to be dominated by men in sex. So there was this misogynistic idea that men should dominate the woman in the bed, and in more ways than one. So porn use has this idea of porn use can put into your the head of a guy, especially these ideas of aggressiveness, violence, because a lot of porn is very violent or aggressive. It can also just instill in this idea of demand. It also, when you get addicted to sexual activity, eventually when you overdo it, sometimes porn videos aren't enough and you want more, and it can cause a lot of problems like that. But there is some pushback to this side of things, and I'll say one study in particular. So there was a study done by the University of Texas where they stated there's no connection between porn use and men's views on women. Now, there was some issues with this study specifically that I looked at. One being that the study primarily just showed men, they took a bunch of random sample of men in, showed them a video or two of porn, and then had them fill out a questionnaire about their views on women, and their views on women were normal per se. And they said, there's no connection between porn use and the views on women. However, one-time exposure to porn isn't going to alter your mind. Also, secondly, another issue is that filling out a questionnaire in front of people, you don't want to write down answers that you know are societally unacceptable because it's kind of embarrassing, and you're being watched, and you kind of already know what the societal norms are, so you're not going to draw attention to yourself that way. It's kind of embarrassing, and this is a problem not just for this type of questionnaire, but for any type of questionnaires done in studies. Always keep in mind that people answer things differently when observed. People behave differently when observed. So those are the two big issues that I don't believe makes that study very trustworthy, but there is a little bit of dissent sometimes when it comes to these things, but there is a high correlation between pornography use and sexual crimes. So overall, porn is harmful to the mind, to the body, to the soul, to the spirit. It impacts everything. Almost every facet of life can be impacted by porn use and a porn addiction. It's a major issue. And yet, no one's talking about it. Well, I mean, people talk about it, but no one really addresses it seriously. Secular culture and pop culture doesn't care. They're driving it home. And people stay silent because they're ashamed. But we need to address this issue. We need to overcome this issue in our country, and we need to stop this. and there you can stop it. And that's the good thing. Here is the redeeming thing, is that you can stop your addiction. You can overcome it, and you can live a life free from pornography. You can live a life free from masturbation. You can live a life free from these things that are causing harm to our country. So how can we overcome this? What are some things we can do to help us overcome this addiction, this problem? So, first of all, you got to admit that you have a problem in the first place. Pornography is an addiction, and like any other addiction, you have to admit you have a problem before you can really start moving forward. But once you admit that you have a problem, once you acknowledge that you have an addiction, now we can take some steps to address it. So, again, kind of like think about it like an alcoholic. An alcoholic will dump out all their drinks, flush their use, or druggies will flush their drugs and get rid of their supply. Just get rid of it all. Similarly, as porn users or whatever, people need to get rid of their memorabilia, their photos, their physical things that are pornography related or whatever. Get rid of them, toss them out, flush them, if you will. And also, when it comes to the computer or internet, put safeguards in place. I mean, I would even say, if you're really serious about this, especially as a Christian, be willing to switch over to a flip phone that doesn't have internet access for at least a time, for at least a period of time. Be willing to switch over to a flip phone. Get rid of any computers or internet access for a month or two, whatever, at home or wherever you struggle with it the most. To the best of your ability, get rid of these things for as long as possible, for as long as you need to, and then bring them back in when you start bringing them back in as you see fit, as what wisdom shows. But if you're not able to do that because of work or whatever, then put safeguards in place. I know there's things like Covenant Eyes, and there's other programs out there and other alternatives that will block porn, will report to others if you're looking at suspicious activity, or if you try to delete the app, they'll report to others. So there's many things out there, many resources out there you can use to help you get rid of your stash, if you will, like any other person dealing with addiction needs to do. So those are some of the first two, I guess, practical steps, which leads us into accountability. Find people who will hold you accountable, find people who care, find people who will want to help you overcome this addiction. And accountability can be hard because it requires consistency, it requires people walking together and being able to trust each other. So accountability is hard, but find people who will hold you accountable. Find people who will tell you need to stop this. Find people who will not just be like, oh, it's okay, buddy. Like people who take this seriously. And find people who will hold you accountable so that when you screw up, you can talk to them. And when you stay clean, they can celebrate with you. So you got to find accountability as well. Again, this is just regular addiction stuff. People use these tactics to attack other addictions. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. But you need to press through it if you want to overcome this. And finally, I want to end on a note of spirituality. You need to replace these bad habits. This time that you're going to be, the time you spend with pornography, the time you spend masturbating, the time you spend idly, basically. You got to fill in good habits to replace these things. And I suggest meditation, prayer, and spiritual satisfaction. I mean, I believe only through the blood of Jesus Christ is men saved by their sin. I only believe through the blood of Jesus Christ can our minds be truly renewed and freed if we actually trust in His Word and take His Word seriously. And so I think we should at least fill in this time that we spend on these things that corrupt our mind, spend them reading the Bible, spend them praying, spend them meditating, and spend our time even replacing with new hobbies that are just good for us, whether that be exercise or whether that be gardening or whatever it may be, something that relaxes you. Fill in your time with new hobbies, new things that will build up new habits that replace the old bad habits, which will help transform your mind and help you develop your brain in a new way. And these things can all be help, but at the end of the day, it's hard. It's difficult to overcome, especially if you're knee deep in this addiction or head deep, how deep you are. To overcome this addiction, it will require work, it will require sacrifice, but it's worth it at the end of the day. And even after you kick it, or even after you've been free for a year or two, or however long it is, you gotta remain vigilant. Even if you never dealt with porn. I know a lot of people, not a lot of people I shouldn't say, but I know people who have never watched porn, who never masturbated. I know people who did that. It's great. It's amazing. It's an incredible freedom. And so What's important then is to remain vigilant, though. All those people I know, they still remain vigilant. They still have things in place on their computers. Even though they never looked up porn in their life, they still have things in place to make sure that they don't ever do it. They also have practices in place, or they're part of men's groups, even though they don't deal with the problem, because they want to remain vigilant. So you got to remain vigilant even after you overcome it. But there is hope, and there is freedom, and there's much more freedom being out of porn than there is in porn. And this is like a pandemic. It spreads wildly fast. It ruins a lot of things in our lives, and it's deadly to our health in many ways, more than one. But we can change this. We can overcome this. And I want to end on a note of hope. We can overcome your own personal porn addictions. We can overcome our own personal porn addictions that people deal with. We can overcome them. It takes work and effort, but we can overcome them. This isn't something you're stuck in forever. This is something you can address. And also, we can change culture. As we continue, if we talk about this topic and we address it, and we start making it culturally acceptable actually to say no to porn, if we start actually creating a culture where we're outspoken about this topic and say, no, this is wrong. We need to teach our generation, upcoming generation, if we protect our kids and warn them early about this problem, we can change culture, we can change the tides. And we need to. For the health of our next generation, for the health of our next civilization, for the health of our children, we need to do this. We need to address this problem in a way that's actually meaningful. And churches need to address this problem, because churches, a lot of your congregants and a lot of your members are dealing with this problem. And a lot of members are dealing with this addiction. And we need to deal with it with love and compassion and take them back to the basics and get them help. So, we can change the world through fighting the good fight. So I want to end with encouragement, guys, and girls. There's a lot of girls out there who deal with this addiction as well. This is not just a guy's problem. But I want to encourage all of you. Stay pure, my friends, and go out there and light the world.